Good afternoon. My name's Caitriona McGilp, and I just recently finished a Masters in Architecture from UCD. So first of all, thank you to the Liam and the whole gang for hosting this event and giving us this opportunity. So I looked at the role of the GAA in the history and development of Irish towns. So why this subject? Well, I've always been interested in sport and played sport, and I played Gaelic football from a young age. And for my dissertation, I thought I'd combine this hobby or interest with my interest in spatial thinking or urban planning. So, Cronin et al. Say the GAA is the focal point for the social life of entire communities, with clubs acting as a cohesive force, building relationships and a shared sense of space. So I tried to illustrate this with a couple of images. So they're both actually from Tralee, one of my study towns. The top one there is showing the madness of an inter-county final day, and the lower one there is just showing how the GAA invites the entire community to join in the celebrations and the club atmosphere. It's not just the playing community, it's the whole family. So Gaelic games are played in almost every town and village on the island. There's over 27 registered clubs, and it is a massive part of our heritage. So when initially starting my research back in September of last year, I expected to find a lot of info on this. However, when looking at research such as the Country Town series and even the Historic Atlas series, sport and GAA in particular was not really mentioned from a historic point of view. It was kind of mentioned briefly in the modern day clubs exist, but I really felt there was a gap in this research. So I looked at the GAA and its evolution over 5 stages of development. The folk game stage, the founding of the GAA, the formation and growth of clubs, expansion and development, and the so-called Celtic Tiger Era. So this timeline is loosely based on geographer John Bale's 5 stages of development of sport, but I adapted it to suit the unique history of the GAA. And I chose 3 study towns, which I felt were quite representative of most Irish towns. And within them, I looked at specific clubs. So in Tralee, there was the John Mitchells. Dundalk, it was the Dundalk Young Irelands, and then Wexford GAA. The playing pitch and club and their embeddedness within the community remains the key requirement for the continued success of the association. So the main focus of my analysis was looking at the relationship between territoriality, what's known as place pride, the GAA, and the Irish town. Place holds a sense of localism and nationalism for all its inhabitants, and apart from war, sport really binds us to a place, most successfully by ascription. So the GAA club and its ground have provided this physical space for place pride to grow and increase for the last 130 odd years since the founding of the GAA back in 1884. So my first stage was the folk game stage. So this was before any sport had rules or regulations or designed spaces to play in, and it was common that fights and riots often broke out. So they were kind of known as a hindrance as opposed to something that was celebrated. Irish people have been kicking, knocking, hitting footballs and smaller sliotar around since the 16th century, and hurling even plays a role in Irish mythology as early as the 7th. But most of these games were actually contested between civil parishes, and therefore there wasn't a lot of support or loyalty from the largely Catholic communities of Ireland. So moving on to the second stage, the founding of the GAA, it was not until the playing pitch was defined that Gaelic games really took hold of Ireland. At the start or the end of the 19th century, Michael Cusack and Maurice Davin wanted to create an association to run Irish sports for Irish people using Irish rules. And at the very first meeting back in 1884 in Thurles, the Parish rule was introduced and Archbishop Croke was invited to be patron. So this immediately established a connection between the GAA, the Catholic Church, and the predominantly Catholic communities of the country. So the Catholic Parish Network was the most important spatial system at the time to most of the town communities. Paul Healy says, these firm roots, the parish structure, are the single most impressive aspect of the GAA and the envy of all other sports. So it was clearly quite a clever decision for the GAA to base its structure on this network, which allowed Gaelic games to kind of increase along this structure. Townlands, which you see here in blue boundary lines, were too small a space, and counties, because there was only 32 of them in the country, were too large. So the parish was seen as the ideal catchment area size to attract players and spectators alike. So there was also the question of where to locate the ground. The towns were the most densely populated area of each parish, and often quite central as well. So they were seen as the most effective and efficient location for locating a playing field. As you can see from this map, at this time, the towns, this is just Tralee as an example, the towns were quite compact. So the pitch was located outside the town as it needed a large space to be in, but it was still walking or cycling distance for most of the town, and it was also near enough to train station, as that was the main transport link at that time for away matches for spectators and players to travel. So again, because of the compactness of the town, the pitch was also very close to other social facilities such as churches, schools and pubs. And on match day, it was a social focal point of the town, and it also provided a social space for town communities to interact on a weekly basis at trainings and also at matches. So the third stage is the formation of clubs. So at the start of the 20th century, Ireland was going through a troublesome time with the 1916 Rising and then later on the Civil War. So the GAA was seen as a strong focal point for town communities to rally around. And in 1918, after the Rising, British authorities actually banned public meetings, which conveniently included Gaelic trainings and matches, but not cricket or lawn tennis. So they saw this as a way to stop nationalist gatherings, but the GAA, of course, did not stand for this. So the 4th of August of that year, they organised what was known as Gaelic Sunday, where they lobbied people to get out and play matches for their local teams. So 54,000 people showed up that day to play for their team. And on that day, it was transformed into a place of protest. And the ban was relaxed shortly after that. The ground is also used as a fundraising space. Throughout my research, looking at newspapers upon newspapers, there's many examples of this. Just one in particular, from Tralee in 1930, the gold medal tournament was hosted in order to raise monies for an injured players fund. And similar incidences happened in Dundalk and Wexford, my two other case study towns. So there was kind of more than just a sporting link to the community. It was also about economical and cultural things as well. The ground was also a mediating space. After the Civil War, families, clubs, towns were divided down the middle, and the GAA really wanted to kind of help this situation. So in 1924, the Tralee Sports Field actually hosted a match between anti-treaty and pro-treaty teams, and the Kerry County team was chosen out of that match. So again, it wasn't just a sporting facility. The ground was establishing a cultural, political, economical and social link with the town community and really increasing its link. So the fourth stage was the expansion and development of the GAA. The second half of the 20th century really saw towns and cities alike really develop and expand significantly. As you can see from this image, Tralee in 1898 has now at least doubled in size, so the pitch is now engulfed by housing estates and other development. So the fact that the towns have now developed around the GAA ground, the GAA itself actually wanted to re-establish itself, the club, as a social and community centre within the town. So unfortunately in 1959, the Dundalk Young Irelands actually lost their ground, and they suffered from low numbers until they found a new home in 1984 because there was just a lack of sense of belonging. So during the 80s, they fundraised. The whole town community got involved. Between 1982 and 89, they actually raised £85,000 through raffles and other social events. So when they bought their new home. So again, it kind of re-established that link to increase place pride within the town. And they also improved the ground over the years. A similar thing happened in Tralee. the whole town community got involved. They had to fundraise, they bought and improved facilities over the years, but in 1966 they had a pavilion and bar at their ground, which is still there today. And the fundraising aspect really provided a strong sense of ownership amongst the town community, because they, rightfully so, felt they owned it because they financed most of it. And of course, over the years they've improved it, which has improved place pride and the connection with the town. So my final study stage, which I've called the Celtic Tiger Era, really allowed clubs to further their development of their clubs, and in some cases relocate, but most cases just improve their facilities. So Wexford Park is a great example of this. In the 1990s, they completely redeveloped it into a 35,000 person capacity. And such a top quality arena really just gives an incentive for the town and players that are playing within the town to get to county finals and important higher profile games which would be hosted by it, to really show off what they can do. And the pride one feels when representing their club in a quality arena really kind of heightens the place pride that they associated with their town. So some clubs, as I was saying, also relocated during this time. Dundalk, as I said earlier, relocated south. So they were in this central location and they moved less than a kilometre south into the centre of housing estates. So although they were moving away from the central historic core and there was that threat of losing that connection with the town, it was seen that they were going to move within housing estates, so they would get a lot of players and potential members from the surrounding area. So when I was interviewing former chairman Pat Hamilton, he really emphasised that point, that they took that risk, went less central, and really have flourished since. Their numbers are continually growing. So they kind of had created a new or extended sense of place pride within the town, as opposed to losing their link with the historic core. Tralee did a similar thing. One of the consequences of the economic boom was that a lot of the central GAA grounds were now seen as really, really valuable pieces of land in which to develop. So many developers in Irish towns wanted to buy these grounds, and clubs were tempted to sell their ground for quite a big profit and then build a top quality facility just outside the town. So this is what the Tralee John Mitchells decided to do, but their move was quite dramatic, and they actually crossed the Sacred Catholic Parish boundary line here in red. So as you can see, they were very central, right beside the train station, and they've moved 2 kilometres south. So this new purpose-built sports complex with artificial pitches, a great clubhouse, was completed last year. But they knew there was a threat of losing that connection to the town, so they actually decided to keep their barn pavilion at their existing historic central location. However, such a dramatic move really has created a sense of ambiguity in terms of players' loyalty and the historic parish rule. So some points that came out of my research. The link with the decision to base the GAA structure on the Roman Catholic parish network allowed a territorial area for players, supporters and town communities. So this was defined, and Paul Healy describes the InterParish Rivalry as a reflection of just how much the games mean to the people of Ireland, and evidence of the firmness of the GAA's root in every single parish in the country. So this system allowed Gaelic games to spread the sense of place pride, and for it to grow and strengthen over the years. And because the town was the most efficient location for the ground, over the years the town has actually developed around it, and it is a very important social space, and it is surrounded by other social spaces such as churches, schools, pubs and parks. The GAA ground over the last 100 years has been a major social space in Irish towns. It is a social focal point for Irish communities. It has been used for fundraising, protesting, mediating, socialising, and these usages have continued to increase the connection between the club and the town over these years. And again, due to the fundraising aspect of most of these clubs, there is a massive sense of ownership over the space, and they just feel They can go there whenever. It is their space, it is part of the town, it is part of their community. So when it comes to the relocations, it really affects the club, the town, and also the new locations. So is the connection between the town lost, or is the new location kind of abandoned apart from this standalone facility in the landscape, or does it regenerate development around it? Undoubtedly, new top quality arenas like the one in Tralee increases place pride, but it does pose a question of loyalty and that parish rule. Who are the players representing, the town, the club, or the parish? So I suppose if I'd want to get anything out of this, my research over the last year, and as Conor was saying, you know, it's the little things in these towns that we really need to save. I would strongly recommend keeping existing GAA grounds within the town and not relocating. It is a sporting venue, a community facility, and also a social space. They've been there for over 100 years, and they're a strong part of the urban fabric of these Irish towns. Unfortunately, it'll be a few 5 to 10 years before we know the consequences of some of these relocations. I mean, will the John Mitchell's club be made up of Tralee townies who cross the Catholic parish boundary every time they go to training or matches? Or will the club be made up of Ballymcgelliget parish players who have a new sense of place pride associated with this GAA club? I suppose only time will tell, but I'll be watching this space. So thanks very much. Any questions?